Hello and welcome to Ready for Nintendo. It is October 30th, 2025. I am James Jones. I'm joined today by the returning Mr. John Lindemann.
Great to be here, James.
We told everybody that you were out last week because of the Kirby Direct, and you just were not going to have any part of that.
You're not totally wrong.
Okay. Well, we didn't actually talk about the Kirby Direct, so you didn't miss out. There you go.
Thank God.
We're going to talk about it this week now that you're back. Also joined today by Mr. Greg Lay.
Ahoy, ahoy, everyone.
You excited to talk about gummies, Greg?
The most exciting thing I think about that is just if for some reason Arnold Schwarzenegger had to say the word gummies. The gummies. My eyes. The goggles do nothing.
It's so stupid. It's so stupid. Last but not least, Mr. Guillaume Vayette. Are you excited to turn the camera 90 degrees and look at it from a top-down perspective, Guillaume?
Oh, I still haven't watched that direct, so I understand it's a reference to it, but that's it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we spent 10 minutes on a mode that's just we've tilted the camera to a different axis.
Well, and also, it's a returning one. I was kind of surprised that wasn't in the first direct, to be honest, that particular bit.
It's a weird, strange, unusual direct. I mean, Gummies is the breaking point. That's the point where this was no longer a serious enterprise being carried out by an individual trying to sell a game and by a person just grinning from ear to ear that Nintendo has given him a feature film's length amount of time to talk about Kirby Air Riders.
Yeah. I couldn't
a long
believe that.
feature film. A Marvel feature film. Not like just the average 90 minutes and Get Out. Or even 100. We're at the full 120. This is a double reeler if this was an old film. Good lord. No, we're actually not around to talk about that today. This is episode 950 of Radio Free Nintendo. Since we haven't done email in a bit, we're going to do a little bit of email to start the show off. Emails. Hey. Do you hear my voice? Do you hear the sincerity in my voice that's definitely not related to allergies and maybe possibly also being slightly sick? That's sincerity. That's an emotional connection with you, the listener. And that kind of emotional connection is invaluable when you're trying to get people to send you emails. Like I'm doing right now. You see, all you have to do, if you have a question, an idea, a thought, a game you want us to play, a concern, information request. Sure, you can just ask an AI and it'll probably give you some fucking bullshit. But you can ask us and we will definitely give you some fucking bullshit. But our fucking bullshit is hand curated. Not like an AI, which is just assembling the next text token based on hundreds of trillions of pieces of documents that it read. We give you earnest, homegrown bullshit. And that's what matters. It's the RFN difference. So, send your questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, ideas, games, social commentaries to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. I do kind of like this voice for doing the email read. It's got a little bit of like timbre to it. It makes it sound a little bit more like narrator voice.
If for some reason you were in the same role as Adrienne Barbeau in John Carpenter's The Fog, I think you would be using that voice.
There we go.
Very soothing until the fog zombies show up.
Yeah, well, that's just life, honestly. Life is soothing, not smoothing. Life is soothing until the fog zombies show up. But emails. I'll read the first email since my voice is still holding out, and who knows how long it'll last. $, aka Money, from Buckhorn writes, 4 of my favorite Hosiers. Is it Hosiers, John?
Hosers.
Hosers. Okay,
Yep.
There's no H.
It's not It's not Hoosiers. It's not Hosiers. It's not a band
Hosers.
Or a team from Indiana.
It probably is a band.
Yeah.
There's probably a band called 4 of my favorite Hosers. They're probably not good, but they probably do exist.
Sure.
Wondering if you could share your thoughts / perspective on the recent acquisition, well, not so recent now, recent acquisition of EA. I don't play EA games, and generally understand them to be one of the companies where good studios go to die. BioWare says hi. Wouldn't shock me if there were larger things in motion I haven't thought of. And I'm always down for some hot takes. God, that's so long ago now. The Hot Takes video is really good. The Hot Takes video is really good. The Hot Takes episode is good, but the video might be better. Because it's just insane. As always, love the show. Greg's contributions in particular, though, you're all terrific. There was no punctuation there, so I put it where I thought it would be, which is after though, not after particular. So yeah, let's give some context here. EA announced back in early October that they had been purchased as part of a multi-company buyout, so multiple investment firms were involved to take EA private. So what that usually means is a external party offers a company an amount of money that exceeds the value of the float of the stock, which is like the total outstanding number of shares. So if you were to multiply that by the current rate the stock sells at, by the number of shares out there, that's the base number, and then they increase that number to some degree, like 25% over that number, whatever. For EA it was 25% over the value of the stock. And so the board then makes a vote because the board represents the shareholders, and the board votes whether or not to accept the buyout. And if they do, effectively, the purchaser awards the money to the shareholders in exchange for their stock. Generally speaking, all companies that sell stock have riders and stuff that make this so you can't like contest it or anything. It just is what it is. That's one of the powers the board has. So EA's purchasing partners were two financial investment firms, one of which is run by Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, who has probably done something in his life. Maybe. I don't know. Who can say? To merit having a war chest of billions of dollars in his investment firm, even though he had never been a stock investor. His family made their money in real estate, that the Saudis gave him all this money to manage, that I'm sure was totally valid and earned, and because of a well-patterned vision. Anyway, I'm not going to go down that road. It is a noteworthy thing. His investment firm, which I believe is that one Silver Lake? There's three. Let's see. I've got him in my stats here. His was Affinity Partners. Silver Lake is a private equity company. And then the third player in this was the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund, the PIF. We've talked about the Saudis and their use of money externally before. So, anytime you hear like, this is the richest person in history, you have to keep in mind that doesn't usually include the Saudis, because the way that they have their money configured is effectively untraceable, and it is unknowable amounts of money. Probably assets in the trillions, but it's really hard to say. Part of this is by design. Part of this is because there are like 800 princes and they all have their own fiefdoms in the estate. And part of this, literally or figuratively, and part of this is because a lot of their assets are held up in these complex investment instruments. Some of this is a function of the fact that the Saudi government is intimately aware of the long-term inviability of their primary economic metric, which is the export of petroleum. And in fact, if you look at the Gulf states, they are all actively engaged in diversification of their assets in order to essentially not be a bankrupt ghost town of weird glass buildings built in the middle of the goddamn desert when the oil money runs out, which it will. There is a finite amount of oil in the ground under the Gulf states, and demand for petroleum is likely to drop off. Certainly in the coal industry, which is another fossil fuel. If you're unaware of what coal is, I don't know why I'm defining the word coal. It's fucking coal. Are you listening to the show and don't know what coal is?
Do you mean Michael Cole?
I do mean Michael Cole. He's gonna call everything an
Michael Cole is in the ground.
He's gonna call everything an insiguri for the next 3 minutes, John. So the there is a decrease in the value of many fossil fuels. Petroleum hasn't. Petroleum's had that a little bit, but the consortium that runs OPEC. I've got to get down to economics now. Fuck this. Do their best to control the flow so that we don't have wild swings in the price. Just a general slow creep up. But there is effectively going to be a time when oil can no longer be their primary economic metric. Either because the oil isn't there anymore because they have extracted it, or they've extracted the stuff that's easy to get to, or people have transitioned to other fuel sources, or both. Probably both is the answer. When that is, I don't know. But also they're intimately aware that the stability of the state and its governance apparatus is largely a function of the fact that money is available for the population that lives there. And if people were not living comfortably, they may not be as eager to be governed such as they presently are. So, economic indices are super important, and they have invested in many things. Some of this is as referred to as sport washing, which is to try to improve their image after, I don't know, maybe some murders, and human rights violations, and some other things. Where they invest in things like a sports team, many sports teams, or they pay an unfathomable amount of money to get WrestleMania hosted in the goddamn desert, which is fucking unbelievable. But like these, or they host a comedy festival that people get made fun of for going to. But again, this isn't just the Saudis. The Emiratis are also engaged in this. The Qataris, this is if you have petrol dollars, you are aware that gimmick, that scheme can only last for so long. And so, a lot of Gulf states are getting really heavy into things like tourism, creating these massive resort islands. I mean, for fuck's sake, I want to say it was one of the Emirates. I can't remember. But one of them paid Disney to build a new fucking Disney park. In a desert. It doesn't make any sense, but the money was good, so we'll take the money. They're trying to get people to come there and put money into their society in different ways and more diverse ways. And so one of those is the PIF. And so the breakdown of ownership here, I want to say the PIF is a 30% owner, but I can't find the numbers. I ran into them.
Yeah, but interesting. I'm just reading about the PIF here. Just an interesting side note is that, they have investments in all over the place, right?
Oh, yeah.
They have investments in Uber, Live Nation, Citigroup, Boeing, Bank of America, Walt Disney.
Oh, yeah.
But they also have a 5% stake in Capcom and Nexon.
They do? Yeah. It is immensely important to them that they have a tremendous amount of diversity in the holdings of the company. They want to ensure, that the assets are long-term viable. Mm-hmm. And so they've done all kinds of things. They took over, They hire lots of former government officials in other countries that are target-rich environments for investments. And again, a lot of investment banks do that. I want to say they sponsored the Pro Tennis Tour. They established Live Golf, which was supposed to be a PGA competitor because the PGA wouldn't take their money. Live Golf has been a catastrophe, but in the end, they managed to money their way into PGA stakes.
They even have a 5% stake in Nintendo.
They do, yeah.
They're so they're all over the place. Along with
fundamentally,
Take-Two, Activision Blizzard, Embracer Group, you name it. Yeah, they're all over.
Yeah, like the PIF isn't like an attempt to buy these companies and then make them work the way the Saudis want them to work. The PIF is almost naked in what it is. It's a public investment fund. Yeah. It is the use of, one thing I have to clarify here. When I say it's government assets versus the royal family's assets, they're the same thing. This is not something you normally think about in statecraft, but this is the reality of the state here. Public investment fund is the government fund, is the Saud family fund. They're all kind of interchangeable. There is some degree of a firewall there, but is it really? Is it? I don't know. I'm not like a, I can't remember what the word, forensic accountant. I don't go down that rabbit hole, but like, it's a different kind of thing. They spend huge amounts of money on like these big, I think they refer to them as mega constructions, like building a whole goddamn island. These kinds of like real estate things. They are heavily invested in banking companies. Blackstone, Uber. I want to say they're heavily invested in Lucid of all things, which if you're unaware is an electric car company. Infrastructure, like all over the place. Because ultimately the goal of the PIF isn't to like exert economic hegemony over these massive international companies. It's to park the unfathomable amount of cash they have somewhere. Because that's the other thing. They have more cash than they can spend. This is a bizarre situation where an organization has so much money, they literally cannot spend it on things anymore. There are no more things to buy. So they put this money to work in these investment firms, and they're just trying to amass assets. They're trying to amass economic riders, things that will continue to generate revenue for the PIF long term, to serve as a buttress against whatever the future has for their petrochemical businesses. And so, while it is always concerning that a government with unlimited human rights violations and concerns about how transparency and public management of public assets and the idea of potential corruption and violence and all that stuff, all those bad things, all those many, many bad things. Fundamentally, that's not the purpose of the org. Now, there are transparency issues with the PIF because government just works different in a state that has a king. There's not really transparency requirements. Like, I don't think the list of officers is publicly available, which for this kind of a thing is kind of a big deal. Like, it's not a sovereign wealth fund. The sovereign wealth fund is like, this is the royal family's assets, but it kind of is because, like I said, the wall between government and the family is porous, to say the least. Like, they're definitely involved in some of the shady shit that the Saudis are involved in. When Jamal Khashoggi, who was almost certainly murdered at the order of the crown prince of the Saudi government. Like, do we know definitively? No. Does it seem quite likely? Yeah.
Yup.
The payout came from the PIF, not from the family, not from the government. It's like, yeah, that doesn't feel good. The government's doesn't really seem like there doesn't seem to be like an independent governance in place. It's all, yeah, it's all very, it's shady, but I don't mean shady in the like, oh, they're covering something up here. I mean shady in the more literal sense. Like, you can see the shape, but the contours are often hard to perceive because there's darkness cast around them by design. Do I think that that they're using the PIF to create soft power? Yeah, probably. But if their goal was to create soft power through buying a bunch of UK football teams, I feel like that's made people hate them more, not less. So maybe that's a shit plan. I don't know, Greg, you probably have your finger on the pulse there. Does the average UK citizen have a better feeling about the Al Saud family after they bought a major pro sports team?
Perhaps some contingent of Newcastle United fans feel better. They weren't very satisfied with the previous chairman of the club, Mike Ashley.
Okay.
He was a famous for being pretty tight-fisted. And so the promise of, being able to have access to profligate spending, like what happened to Manchester City, and so many others. I'm sure there are people who welcomed it. I'm sure there are other people that have misgivings about it and think it's, maybe selling the soul of the club. I'm not nearly, so educated on all the feelings that are going on up there, on Tyneside to tell you the balance. But you can be sure there'd be plenty of people they did actually win a trophy last year, for instance, which is not something they've done a lot of for a club that, has a lot of fans. But it's really difficult to win stuff when you've got all these other clubs that have got where they are because they're owned by people with that kind of petrochemical derived wealth. There'll be people in that specific neck of the woods that are happy. More broadly, probably not so much, but yes, I mean, what's interesting to me about this is not particularly very informed sort of thing, but when you think of any of the, as you say, the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, you think of them, well, of course, they have enormous amounts of liquidity that no one else really has, right? So it's like people from all over the world be very eager to go to them to make an investment happen, right? They have an idea that they think is something that can produce big dividends, but you need the liquidity to make it happen. Who's got it? Those guys, because we're constantly funneling money to them to buy their petrochemicals. What's weird about this is the fact that it is a debt leverage deal, right?
Yeah, so what's weird about it.
What makes these people the facilitators of deals is because they have liquidity. If you're just borrowing the money, why are they even involved? Are they guarantors or something? I don't know the details enough to say, what exactly the mechanics of that, but it just struck me as a little bit peculiar, because I think that really gets to the heart of the question here, the debt leverage nature of taking EA private in this takeover. There is another soccer analogy to be drawn here, actually, that did not involve any amount of, kind of immense petro wealth, and it made a fan base very unhappy. And that was the takeover of Manchester United by the Glazer family in the aughts, which was, the Manchester United were a publicly traded company. Essentially a football club, and the Glazers, as you already mentioned, they were able to offer enough money over what those shares were trading for to complete a takeover, take them private, and they did that with borrowed money. So, and then that debt is saddled onto the football club in that case, as the debt will be saddled onto EA. In this case, and then they have to service that debt, right? That is the essence of the debt leverage buyout. And, of course, in the Manchester United case, they've been very accustomed to winning just about everything, for a period of, over a decade before the Glazers came in. The essence of the Glazer takeover, what they believed could make it economic, because it's, quite a sort of unappetizing prospect is the thought of like, well, do you think your football club will be more competitive when it has to spend, there's no cost control in the Premier League, there's no salary cap, there's no parity measures, anything like that. So it's like, okay, what if now, instead of just, the money that we have to spend on players, some of it has to go on the service in the debt that was taken out to buy the team by this different ownership? How is that going to make you better? And, really, I guess what it came down to is the Glazers were betting that they could radically increase Manchester United's ability to generate revenue, that the current ownership were not nearly good enough at capitalising on Manchester United's corporate potential, that they were not nearly good enough at monetising what they had, and that the Glazers, coming from, the American sports background, obviously they were owning, the family had owned the Buccaneers for quite some years at that point in the NFL. They could come in and generate far, far more revenue, give global deals, all this kind of stuff, modernise the operation. And they would do so by so much that it wouldn't matter that they had to service this huge debt, and, they could, proceed and keep winning all sorts of things in the increasingly, insanely competitive Premier League as it began to attract more and more of these sorts of, entities, these Russian oligarchs and, the UAE and all this kind of stuff.
These nice people.
And, it wasn't as if they immediately went into obscurity at all. They actually had some very successful years, while Sir Alex Ferguson, the manager who sort of overlapped the ownership transition, was still there. They won the Champions League, and they won the league a lot more times, and they did all this stuff. Now, once Sir Alex Ferguson had to be replaced by the Glazers, it didn't go so well after that. But I guess the question I have in this analogy is whether how legit. I'm not nearly educated enough about Manchester United's finances to tell you that how well they delivered on the notion of, we can radically increase revenue. I mean, certainly revenues did radically increase, but some of that's because of just sport in general.
Yeah, I can speak to this a little bit. So I think, Manchester United, I think they're still probably top 4 revenue in the world. So they still make a ton of money. However,
the Glazers have mostly divested from them now, but we have to assume that their kind of period is what left them there, in that position.
As of June 30th, 2025, they still owe $1.1 billion in debt.
Hell yes.
So I don't know how they're ever going to pay that off.
And for context, this is, I think, at this point, nearly 20 years after the takeover. I think it was maybe 07 or 08. I forget. It was, the back end of the aughts, but a good long while ago now. And for all the increases in revenue and whatever's gone right or wrong off the field and off the field, on the field, all that stuff, an enormous debt pile remains for people to, the current ownership and all that to deal with. Now, the point is for me is, with EA, what is even whatever, like I said, whatever the Glazers did do in terms of increasing how much revenue Man U could generate, what's the path forward here in terms of what makes this economic? What makes this actually we can generate so much more revenue than EA currently does? Because I have to say, I'm not being that invested in EA games or anything, but they don't strike me as the sort of enterprise that's been leaving money on the table and not ruthlessly monetizing every bloody thing.
So there's a couple things in play. One, you actually hit on one of the things I wanted to mention, because I did a little bit of reading on this one, and there's a Substack that actually handles a little bit of investment stuff in the business space. Business professor and author Joost van Drunen, who pointed out that normally when you do a leveraged buyout, an LBO, the amount of debt you take is usually commensurate to about 4 years of revenue by the company being acquired. Because you don't want to, if you over leverage your debt against the income, that becomes a bad asset. Because, hey, debt has a cool thing it does, is that it gets bigger if you pay it down. This is, 4 is kind of the target. This is closer to 16 times. So it's already seems like a very bad bet. It seems like a tremendously poor 19 times. Oh, good. Perfect. So that's neat. Now keep in mind the 55 is not all debt leveraged. 20 million is debt leveraged, but normally when you take over a company, you pay relative to its cash flow. So that's not ideal. But this is kind of a thing that the Saudis have been doing. And again, I have the percentages. I'll get to that in a second. The Saudis have been acquiring pieces of video game companies, particularly North American ones, particularly American ones, with the intention of shrug shoulders ? One of the things they've talked about is they want to try to create a games industry in Saudi Arabia. That is both esports and development and all that stuff. And that goes back to the economic stuff we talked about earlier. If like a tremendous percentage of your population, and the Saudis have a lot of young people, work in petrochemicals, and then there's no more petrochemicals, you suddenly have a population that does not have a job and is very used to a standard of living. So, these kinds of investments are quite potentially driven in part to create jobs inside their country. Or to at least create the prestige and give opportunities for people in their country to go work abroad, or to develop an economic component to their society that can absorb employees away from petrochemical. Again, they also are dealing with a relatively young population, so that is more important than it would be in a graying population like in East Asia, where they are, broadly speaking, getting older. You're not as worried about making sure there are jobs available. You're more worried about making sure jobs get filled. So that's sort of the different economic calculus in there. So there is the thought that companies tend to perform better when they're privately held than publicly traded. And some of that is thought to deal with the fact that publicly traded companies are very remiss to leave money on the table. And the reason for that is they have a fiduciary responsibility to pursue the investment to the best of their ability. That doesn't mean they have to grab the most money available at any one given time. That's kind of a misunderstanding of fiduciary responsibility. It means they have to make decisions that are right for the economic health of the investors and the company. That may mean foregoing some profit now in order to put yourself in a better position later. The problem is the board sets the agenda for these companies. Publicly traded companies are managed by a board of directors. That board is usually comprised of a mix of internal and external parties, and they are elected by the investors. The board's job is to act as the agents of the investors and ensuring that the company is making those right economic decisions. The board, and what does define right economic decisions? Well, the board decides what that is. To tack one layer on top of that, the CEO and most of the C-suite, pretty much the whole C-suite, maybe even down to senior vice presidents, depends on the company, are impaneled by the board. The board selects the CEO. The CEO often selects their lieutenants. The board has to approve the hiring of those roles. I know in one company I was around, that went all the way down to the directorate level, which is pretty far down the chain. Now, most of those low ones, it's just a rubber stamp. Yeah, sure, whatever. But the board can also just decide we're not happy with what the CEO's been doing, get the fuck out. And so, if the board gets their orders from the investors, and the investors, usually institutional investors, want certain outcomes, like I want to get money now, the companies that are publicly traded are more likely to make short-sighted decisions that can hurt their long-term economic viability in the pursuit of immediate profit. We see this with some of these companies where they do the thing where you're like, well, that was dumb. The Atari conversation we had a couple weeks ago, John. A lot of the things they were doing was short-term profit taking, short-term money cuts, right now, save money.
Yep.
Even in spite of, hey, if you continue this investment, there's actually gold at the end of this rainbow. A private company doesn't have those same concerns, and so they can continue to pursue these sort of longer-term, like, roll the line out investments that may or may not result in a win, but may.
Yeah,
you know?
they also don't have to chase trends as much either.
Right. They could be more reserved. And Nintendo holds a lot of its own stock. They are publicly traded, but the stock isn't, like, the majority of the stock isn't necessarily available, if that makes sense. So they could be more conservative with how they act, and they are hyper-conservative. Most investors would not let the company sit on that much cash asset. They would want that paid out to the investors. So the Saudis have in some cases though. So they bought a mobile company, a mobile developer, called, hold on, I'm blanking on its name. I had it in my notes. Where is it? Savvy? Yeah, Savvy. Scopely, excuse me. Scopely is a mobile developer that they acquired, and their strategy wasn't to get involved in what games the company made or to like try to inject like, you know who's great? Salman bin al-Saad is great in the middle of the game. None of that shit. Their tactic was, we have a fuckload of cash. We are going to spend a fuckload of cash on this mobile game. When most mobile games don't spend a lot of money, they're just trying to get to be the hit. They dropped $1 billion onto a little game you might have heard of called Monopoly Go for its marketing campaign. For a mobile game that you can play without a single cent passing from your wallet. John, how many times do you see a Monopoly Go ad during a sporting event? Is it between 1 and 100 trillion?
Yeah.
It's like big name celebrities from like A-list actors doing ads for fucking Monopoly Go. And it's worked. That company has seen outrageous growth because they basically bought their way into the lead position in the market. It's entirely possible, and that $1 billion investment has paid off. It's entirely possible that that's their plan. That their plan is like, well, EA's management team. The thing is, they didn't lay off the management team. They're keeping the CEO. But it's entirely possible they felt like the investors are better off being replaced with freer-handed executives. It's also important to note that the Saudis are not. The company wasn't bought by the Saudis. The Saudis already had a 9.9% stake. What's changed is they pumped money in to be involved in the plan, in the deal. So where all the other investors got bought out of their shares, the Saudis kept their 9.9%. So they're still in what the term refers to as the consortium, with Silver Lake and the other one, I can't, Jared Kushner's slush fund.
Affinity.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind that Jared Kushner, when he left his completely unearned job in the previous Trump administration, was immediately given a bunch of money to run his investment firm by, hey, guess what? The Saudis. So there's Saudi money on both sides on that one. Silver Lake, not so much. Silver Lake is kind of a more standard operating procedure, one of these companies. My guess is the Saudis had an opportunity that like they felt because the Saudis were already in the door holding 9.9% of the company, they were aware of where the other investors were and saw this as a strategic opportunity to acquire an American asset that they can use to funnel jobs into their economy, that they can use as a long-term hedge for replacement of the oil, petrochemical dollars and petrochemical jobs. That they could leverage what effectively they've created with Kushner's money pit, as a kind of like a second hedge to be like, yeah, no, it's an American company buying into this. We're just holding on to our 9.9%. Don't ask where that money comes from. Nobody cares. Honestly, it feels more like it was a target of opportunity than it was like a long-term like scheme being played out. It's like they had the foot in the door. They thought they could make the deal. They had the partners to make the deal with. The amount that it's leveraged is very freaky and maybe is worrying. Now, granted, in the event that the company defaults, I'm sure they have a creditor who would be more than happy to pay off. I think it's J.P. Morgan Chase, who's the issuer of the loan. Because guess what? The Saudis could find the $20 million that they're used to pay. They could have bought it cash. They don't care.
Yeah, that's the thing. In the end, even if it's not used directly, their vast liquidity is facilitating this.
Right.
But, I guess the point that remains, though, with that debt leverage, with the debt that the EA will carry from here, I would still be very surprised if it's not a case of, like, okay, things have to change, right? Like, it's just like, as a result, in terms of what they were doing before, all of a sudden is going to have to, they're going to have to make up the shortfall that servicing the debt sort of represents in some fashion. And that's where it just seems tricky to me. Let's envision, not necessarily a very appetizing thought, but let's envision that somebody wanted to facilitate a debt leverage buyout of Nintendo before the Switch came out. right? And they would probably make the argument of like Nintendo, for all its history in the video games industry, for all its successes, it is painfully conservative and doesn't monetize things, nearly as ruthlessly. They're not doing films, they're not doing theme parks, they're not doing all the things they've started doing since that time, and they're not charging people for online, they're not they're not doing bloody paid DLC even if you go far back enough. And it's like, we could do all those things and increase revenue, and therefore the debt leveraged buyout would still be economic. With EA, I assume it would have to be cost cutting, right? I mean, what else?
So
how much?
They haven't engaged in cost cutting in the acquisitions they've had. EA's already gone through some pretty aggressive cost cutting. It might actually be, it could be the opposite. It could be a situation where they say the board-based management system that was running this company previously was too beholden to the investors and to relevant cost cutting. And that their lack of investment has hampered this company's ability to put product in the marketplace that can generate revenue. They've become overly leveraged on their big annualized sports franchises.
And hitting quarterly sort of targets rather than, making longer range decisions. So, there's, I guess, you can entertain the notion that if you made the right moves, that somehow you could grow their ability to generate revenue with some more strategic maneuvering over time. But obviously that is much easier said than done.
I mean, when they bought Scopely, the mobile company, one of the two mobile companies they bought, it was believed that they paid $5 billion. It was believed that they massively overpaid, like on orders of magnitude. And they were mocked for it. Like, you're stupid. What are you doing? They then spent $1 billion on Monopoly Go alone, and now the asset's worth more than they paid for it. So, like, they actually invested in the company and said, no. You guys just don't have vision. And it worked out for them. And the teams working on those projects say, like, yeah, we've got everything we need. We have assets we're taken care of. They don't really get involved in the operations of the company. They just kind of, we need something, we get it. And I can absolutely see, and some of that might be ego of like, we are excellent. So there is a sense, and I'm not saying this derisively, this happens in all kinds of industries. There is sometimes a sense when you look at the business decisions they make of like, well, I mean, we're hugely successful. We must know what we're doing. It's like, well, no, you extracted oil from the ground. You just happen to be lucky that you live on the top of a bunch of dead dinosaurs. I understand oil's not usually made of dinosaurs. It's made of plant material mostly. You get the point. And so there could be just the sense of like, well, no, we're just really good at this. We're just really good at this. Like this asset has been abused. We're taking it in and we're going to give it a good home and it's going to become strong.
Well, yeah, but the problem there is, how do you pay off that leveraged debt though? You usually
they don't have to.
Well, I mean,
that's the thing.
Well,
you would think the goal at some point is going to be, that it will be economic because we will grow the revenue generation, to such an extent that servicing the debt is not, would not be any kind of constraint. Which, like you said, I mean, in the end, how much of a constraint is it anyway? Which is I guess an interesting question, but I suppose one thing about having this much power concentrated in the hands of very few people is that they can change their mind relatively easily about what absolutely. Priorities are, and therefore, at a certain point they might be like, no, well, I'm not as inclined to just bail this out, and it has to fix itself, and then that might the debt load might be more problematic for the company and how it can continue to function. But it certainly throws, something of a cloud over them for the time being in terms of, you said, especially with the kind of ratio, how severely leveraged it is. I think people are going to wonder how this is going to work for some time until you kind of see how much of a kind of course, what kind of a course they set from here.
Yeah.
You know, but in terms of how that shows up with the actual, you know, the games themselves, you know, in terms of, features and monetization strategies and all that kind of thing. I guess, you know, as you said, there's an interesting notion of maybe it could actually foster less short-termism, which would be, you know, a little bit different, seemingly based on I'm not interacted very much with it. We did have an email some time ago that we haven't answered about whether we would get like Madden now that it's on Switch too.
Yeah.
Things like that. And I messed around a bit with one of the EA FCs when it was deeply discounted. That's the extent of my interaction with EA products going back over a period of about 15 years at this point. You know, I think since like one of the PS3 Maddens. So I'm not, you know, I can't tell you, you know, how the trajectory, you know, of how that experience has kind of got, you know, evolved with changing monetization strategies and, you know, development budgets and all that kind of thing. But, it does suggest that maybe, you know, something could change about that because it's such a like treadmill they've been on, you know, right, where it just like the complexity of the development has only gone up, but the timeline stays the same, right? So
yeah, you still get a year.
Yeah.
That just leads to them pretty much copy and pasting the same game year after year after year.
Yeah.
And then
like
probably
you basically
I would expect
add 3 features.
I would expect at some point, like I see this with FC26, I mean at some point they're going to probably do like a completely new version. Like I think this is the last, for example, I think this is the last FC that's going to have support for like PS4. Right. Which indicates that there's some watershed moment coming with the engine or something like that.
Yeah, and so. you know every 5 years you blow it up and make a new one.
Yeah.
But then the next 4 years you just iterate on the old one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. Like you can play that as a certain long-termerism. Honestly, like, and again, I don't engage with EA Sports that much, but it does feel like they are less sick in the head than their 2K counterparts, who are just absolutely the worst at everything. But, you know, it's more than just that. Like, you look at, John, I'm blanking on it. What's the company that makes all the good shooters for EA?
What, Respawn?
Yes. Yeah, Respawn.
Or DICE?
Yeah. No, it's Respawn. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. But like they, you know, they have why am I blanking on the name of the robot mech?
What, Titanfall?
The Titanfall. Yeah, they had Titanfall, which evolved into 2, which ultimately they worked with Disney to give those guys a freaking Star Wars game, which they spent ungodly amounts of money on. It was really good, and then they did it again. They did it a second time. Even though I don't think they were super thrilled with the return on it. So like there is like a path for companies to potentially evolve and grow under that umbrella, and maybe without the quarterly concerns where it can be safer to delay a game because the investors won't get mad. Like that's another thing. Like you can delay a game more easily if you're not beholden to investors who expect that game to come out at the end of Q3. That would put them in a better position to continue to evolve some of these things. I know the email mentioned BioWare. I don't actually hold EA's feet to the fire for what's happened at BioWare. You know, the founders of BioWare left. The company has felt like it was stagnating pretty much since, I'd guess what? The end of the first Mass Effect trilogy. I know that they made, what's the other franchise they make?
Dragon Age.
Yeah, I know they made a Dragon Age that people liked after making a Dragon Age that people didn't. But it just feels like that the issues at BioWare were at BioWare. They were in the issues coming from inside the house. Now there is some argument that some of the issues with Andromeda were the fact they were forced to use an engine that was made for one of DICE's shooters. Maybe that's true. But that game also just isn't very compelling. Like the stupid faces and the weird glitches and whatever were very funny, but nobody ever said like, oh man, but if the story, oh man, if it had been presented well, I was like, yeah, it's also there, I guess. So I don't know, like maybe it's not, there is a certain amount of here's the new boss, same as the old boss, because it is the same boss. Like the CEO is sticking around. The guy that they once literally made him as a villain in, was it Mirror's Edge? Where the villain looks just like the CEO of the company. Like that should be worrying. But, you know, he's also never managed a privately held company. So like maybe he makes different choices too. Like there is unknown. This is a big question. Like we spent a lot of time basically to settle on, man, fuck. Don't doom and gloom this. Don't assume this is just sports washing. Like I'm sure it's part of it, but again, they don't own any more of the company than they owned before if you don't count the fact that I suspect Kushner's company is just a front. But fundamentally, like, this isn't a political gambit so much as it is an economic one. I don't expect them to do anything that's going to, like, fuck shit up, because they are putting a lot of money in this and would like to see it succeed. Like, that's the other thing of, like, they're not going to go in there and torch the place because they just dropped billions of dollars to get it. So, I would guess the average consumer probably won't notice much of a difference. Like, they invested a bunch of money in SNK. SNK has been spending more money as a consequence. Has it really changed what SNK is? Yeah, probably. Like, they exist. They were just kind of a nominal entity previous to this. One step from holding company. Like, you know, they've made a bunch of games. Are they good? No. Did they put like one of the soccer players that they bought out of retirement to come play in their league in the fighting game? Yeah, they did do that. They did do that. And it's just as stupid as you think it is. Yes, that is the thing that happened. And yes, it was very dumb. But, like, SNK wasn't making games previously, so, you know, maybe it's not a huge deal. I don't know.
But it does seem to show that they did get involved in, you know,
they did
have a say in the content of the game. So, like, even though they were hands off with that one, you know,
they've been hands off with most of their assets, but not that one SNK thing. Yes.
Right.
But they also were sponsoring the fighting game tournament for that game. So that's probably more where it was. It was probably more from the fact they were pushing it in fighting game tournaments than it was in the we own this company, you're going to put this soccer player in. Cause I'm sure if Capcom had their fighting tournament sponsored by the Saudis, they'd have put whoever the fuck the Saudis wanted it to. But also that game wasn't very good and didn't sell very well and people made fun of it. So it's entirely possible that they'll learn a lesson from that and go, you know what? Maybe don't do that. Maybe don't put Messi in a fucking fighting game. Pretty sure it was Messi.
It was Ronaldo.
It was Ronaldo? Okay.
It is an important... They're both excellent players, they're generational, right. All-time players, but it is an important distinction.
It is, yes. It's very funny. It is still extremely... You know who needs to be in this? Random sports guy. Done. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. And when you look at it, it's the best part is when you look at it and they modeled it, you could tell people making the game didn't give a fuck. It's so funny. If you get the chance, you should just go watch the animations. Just his are so much worse than everyone else's. Because the people making that game did not give a fuck. So, I don't know, like, there is a certain amount of keep in mind, there are two other players in this who have a lot of money tied up. They're not going to let EA burn the house down. I mean, they're not going to let the Saudis burn the house down. But also the Saudis have a lot of money tied up in it. And they have a strategic economic imperative to generate industries inside their home country that will fundamentally, in a very weird way, because the PIF is effectively kind of the government too, there's almost a weird amount of oversight that it has simply because they can't fuck up the mission, which is to ensure the long-term viability of the country. It's not to say that you shouldn't be circumspect of things that they say and actions that they take. Believe me, I fully endorse any kind of like circumspect thinking around their activities. But there is almost quite literally a sword of Damocles here. And I don't know that expression has ever worked quite so accurately. That they don't want to put billions of dollars into one of these investments and then just fuck the whole thing up. Because they need these companies to be as strong as they can possibly be to accomplish the long-term objectives they have set for themselves. So I would expect them to try to run this thing in a way that is more appealing to consumers than what EA has been doing historically, in an effort to try to generate big selling games. And that might actually mean more investment. Am I concerned that they might do content moderation for the content of these games? Maybe. I don't know. It might be more likely that teams might self-censor than it would be them actively going in there and going like, no, this has got to go.
Well, I mean, we'll see who the next cover star is on FC27. If it's Cristiano Ronaldo, who plays in the Saudi Pro League, I'll be a little bit questionable.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if we get the alternate covers thing. They've been doing that with Madden for years. And it's like, yep, here's the alternate cover for the home market. But, sure. Whatever. Like, as long as it didn't, like, fundamentally change what the game is, alright. But maybe that wouldn't be a bad thing. Maybe changing what the game is might make it better. Who could say? I don't know. We spent an hour on this. I did not plan to spend an hour. I just planned this to be a quick one. There is a lot. There's a lot here, and like I've heard the full spectrum of. Actually, pretty much all I've heard. You know what? No, that's a lie. That's a lie. Pretty much all I've heard was doom and gloom on this, and I totally get that. Like, I am not saying that the actors here are good people that are worthy of kind of like, just trust them. I mean, what are they gonna do? Or anything like that, or that you should assume that they have the best interests of anyone but themselves at heart.
Yeah, it's kind of bad meets evil. It's like all those people you hate, they just bought EA. That's kind of like the company you hate. It's like, cool.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, there is an economic imperative to them to not fuck this up.
Yeah.
And there's also a political imperative on them to not fuck this up. And there's also a literal, we don't want our people to riot imperative for them to not fuck this up.
Yeah, I mean, there's several golden gooses involved in this, especially with EA, where it's like, just don't damage this franchise and it will make you money year over year over year,
right,
to infinity.
Yeah, and like I actually think they probably, given how the line about the fact that they are 19 times over the company cash inflow, and how utterly wild that is when you do a buyout. Mm-hmm. Not even a leveraged buyout, just a regular buyout. The leveraging is a whole different, like, that's weird. I don't understand why you did that.
Well, I mean, they just renewed the Madden license until 2030?
Yep.
So that would have cost them some money.
Oh yeah. I fully believe that they think the current governance of EA is not leaving money on the table from the standpoint of like, well, I mean, they could charge more for this DLC. We could get more gambling in this game. But more from a more strategic, like, they're overly indexed on these handful of things, and as a consequence, they are missing the forest for the trees. We can make so much more money with the tools of this company than the current people making it are.
Yeah.
And what the thing is, that's probably true. Can they do it? Can those people do it? That I cannot tell you. But I do believe that the short-termism of how EA has been run historically probably is leaving money on the table.
Mm-hmm.
But it's money that would be actualized years later. And it's losses. It is also left losses, or it is also cut losses. Absolutely. That's the risk you take. It's a mix. And I I believe that EA probably, EA could be managed better than its current management structure has given it the ability to be managed. And that is clearly what they think, having leveraged this much money. And again, there are other players, and even if it is the Saudis who have infinite money, and almost literally, the fact that a bank was willing to issue them that much debt against the company, against effectively a third of its asset value on the books, like, that tells me that at a minimum, the bank saw a business plan that they thought was viable. Because banks aren't in the business of going like, oh my God, I'm going to have to pursue the Saudis for default. Nobody wants to do that. That's a pain in the ass. So they issued that loan because they thought they'd make money on the loan, which means they thought they'd be able to pay it back, which means they thought the business plan that they saw was good enough. Now, is it possible they took it as a loss leader and like, yeah, we're going to fuck it up, or we're going to have business with the Saudis? Maybe. Everybody here has their own imperative interests that they're thinking through, but I don't know. I don't feel like they're going to just throw away a bunch of money. I feel like they're going to try to make something out of this. Are we going to like what they make? I don't know. Do you like what EA currently makes? Fair question. So, we'll just have to see, I guess. It'll be very interesting to see, like, because the fact that they're not replacing Andrew Wilson, presumably he's not replacing his team, leads me to think that they don't think the problems are the people who were at the company. They think it's the business around it. Well, we'll see. All right, we got to stop. We spent an hour on this. Holy shit. Oh shit, did not plan for that. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to figure that out during the break. So stay tuned. Oh man, John, the Pony Excess is on 30 for 30.
Oh, great. Nice.
That's one of the best. There's so many Jerry curls in that one. Oh, there's so many.
Sure.
It's the best. Eric Dickerson over there from the 80s talking about how they're doing things then Eric Dickerson from the 2010s going like, nah, man, I got paid so much money.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
Yeah. Well, and, it's pretty funny in retrospect because now that stuff's all legal. It's just like right out there on Front Street, right?
Oh, and hey, guess what program's gotten a lot better as a consequence? Oh, hi, it's SMU in Dallas with all that business/cocaine money.
All those boosters, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, they're boosted, all right.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about cocaine. I mean, we might, but we're not here. We're not here to do that explicitly. That is just a bang-on effect of all of this. We're here to continue with our quest down the email trail. I sounded a lot better in my head than before I said it out loud. I'm going to give you another pitch for email. I gave you kind of like a friendly, maybe a little bit, a little bit Father Knows Best voice pitch last time. I don't want to do that again. I retread. My voice sounds weird today. It is what it is. I'm going to give you more of a... John, give me a prompt. How should I do this email pitch? I'm gonna improv off the dome.
So this is a pitch for people to send us email, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Gilbert Gottfried this time.
I mean, I
can't do voices right now. I can't do voices right now.
Maybe like a Michael Buffer sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's get ready to read emails. I don't know.
He's pretty bloody available, Buffer, isn't he? He's everywhere.
He is. He's still used, yeah, in his twilight years, no less.
So I do have a story on that, John, which is they once flew Buffer out to do a taping of Nitro, which was $5,000. That was the fee. And then didn't use him.
Stupid. Yeah.
That company lost $30 million in 1 year.
Yeah. Shock and awe.
He was there and they didn't use him. He came out with the microphone and they didn't say anything and then they cut the commercial. It was just
ridiculous.
The worst. It was confirmed he also didn't say anything in the ring either. Oh, it's so good. All right. No, this was the pitch to get people to send us email. Like, I'm not gonna, let's get ready to email. I'm gonna get sued. He sues you. He will sue you. So emails, RFN at NintendoWorldReport.com. That's the email address. Emails are what you put text in a thing and send it to us. You can also do pictures. They do take rich formats. You could attach anything. Please don't attach anything. I mean, maybe a picture, that's fine, I guess, but like, don't put anything in there. It's gonna make me go like, did this motherfucker send me a virus? Because I'm not going to read your email if this motherfucker might have sent me a virus. So, emails, RFN at NintendoWorldReport.com. That's where you send them. That's where we get them. That's where we read them. That's where we do segments like this. Guillermo, I'd like you to read our next email. This is from Adolf Vega.
Yes, Adolf Vega writes, what can be done to make the Metroid series popular? Essentially, Metroid is Coca-Cola, and Hollow Knight Silk Song is Sam's Club Diet Caffeine-Free Cola. Except in this scenario, the Sam's Club Cola is outselling Cola 7-1. Metroid has the legacy, but somehow, the underdog is dominating the sales. What, if anything, can Nintendo do to make Metroid a popular franchise? P.S. I do like Hollow Knight, don't get me wrong, I just think it's overrated. I don't have as much interest in playing Silk Song, but I have a lot of interest in replaying Metroid Dread. Maybe I'm biased.
Well, they're different games. Like, they're fundamentally different games. Like, yeah, they do both fit in the broad strokes rubric of Metroidvania. But it's kind of a disservice to describe any of them and just be like, well, they're tautologically the same kind of game. No, they share some core features, but they also differ on some significant core features that fundamentally like makes them different expressions of the basic parameter of a Metroidvania. So I don't know that it's fair to like Oreos and Hydrox this shit, which had been a better example because Hydrox is the original, but Oreos is the one everybody knows. That one's free. You can have that one. But also Hydrox tastes like shit. So, you know, shrug. I don't know. Like, what do we think the biggest impediment to
I think Guillaume had a very excellent idea for this years ago that still hasn't been pursued, and therefore, you know, it hasn't happened. The inevitable popularity spike.
Yeah, we were talking about sitting on money earlier. Well, here's a prime example. But yeah, I don't know. Like ultimately, I'm kind of
Samus.
Maybe I'm biased by from reading like something that Jeremy Parrish wrote a long time ago. I don't remember if it was an article or just like on social media, but he was like, maybe let franchises die. Like if there's no one to carry them, like if the makers don't want to make them especially, and if the audience has shrunken so much that it's not really worth it, like maybe you can not just let it, what's the expression? Life fallow, but like just maybe let it die, you know? Because like what is Metroid ultimately? Like that's a question that I think Nintendo is asking themselves, you know, constantly every time that there's a plan to make a new one. And I think that a lot of people's conception of like the platonic ideal of Metroid is, you know, the third game, Super Metroid. And that's just a sequence of items that you pick up in a non-linear labyrinth, and also some bugs and some actually, you know, techniques that you break the sequence here and there. And also it has like a cool atmosphere. But people don't play it for the story. They don't play it for like, it's literally like those two things. Right. In my opinion. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. So, like, how do you continue that?
So, your response to a question was, how do you make it popular is kill it.
Yeah, this is where I was going. So,
in its sleep. I mean, whether you
I don't
think
know,
that's
like, do we need, like, I don't know. Literally, I don't know how you would make it popular without turning it into something that it's not, you know? Like, you can't make like, you can't do it through the story because it's not, the Metroid story is not what's been gripping people over, the decades, right? Like,
one could say that about a great many Nintendo properties. That's not really unique in that regard, I would say. The point is lightheartedly put, you were very soundly rejecting the premise of the question and say, well, must we make it popular? Yeah, which certainly Nintendo is only going to, pursue such things if it sees the upside in that. I don't think it's necessarily a question of obligation. There's plenty of things that, have gone, several years without new entries, or and may go many years hence from now without anything if they don't see a pathway forward. And so that's what it will be very interesting to see how things go from here in terms of, as we've said so many times, Prime 4 is this sort of very peculiar obligation that they're following through on, by after painting themselves into a corner in a period where, they were in very difficult, kind of commercial position, and basically were like, well, we've got to try and, use anything and everything we've got, right? It's not a question of, hey, let's just, we've got all these things that, we know can make us a bunch of money, and we'll just go with the bankers, the things that are absolutely sure to succeed, and everything else is small potatoes. Like, they weren't in that position, and that's why they were doing things, like, saying, hey, let's announce Metroid Prime 4 before we know anything about, what it's actually going to be. But yeah, obviously that position has changed very radically since it was announced. And, so you would think at this point, if there's going to be a path forward for the franchise, it's going to have to be based on, something of a commercial footing, where they see, I mean, Dread did relatively well in terms of it sold better than other games in the series. So there's that. Yeah. And I don't know how much, from a development point of view, in terms of working with Mercury Steam, the oversight, like, if all that taken together, that return that they got there was sufficient to consider, going again on that front. With Prime 4, again, it's so bizarre. It's really difficult to kind of think about what may or may not come out of it. But I'm sure, the sales and the response and all that will, have some sort of bearing. But yeah, it's, I guess the interesting thing about Hollow Knight that I don't think it brings up is just that it is some sort of demonstration that a game that's, again, very notable differences, but that is in some sort of similarity with a Metroid game, can sell these sorts of numbers and exert this sort of, we've joked about its bizarrely outsized influence on release schedules for, and all that kind of thing. Like, I think when you consider, things like, Symphony of the Night and it's, all those games that came out of that, like, they were never commercial juggernauts. They obviously they had a decent thing going, enough to keep making those games for Nintendo portables for a period of years under, Igarashi. But, it was very much on a modest scale, reusing sprite assets to a great degree and all that kind of thing. They knew it wasn't going to necessarily sell vast amounts. It was just if you had a cost control budget and you could be pretty sure you were going to sell more than enough to turn a tidy profit on it. And that was that. Whereas, with Hollow Knight, it suggests the potential, to go, to reach more people than previously maybe we might have thought you could. Again, Guillaume talks about Super Metroid, which is absolutely, kind of, very paramount in people's minds when they think about the genre in general and the series in particular. How much of a commercial money spinner was that in its day? Not really that big, compared to other Super Nintendo games. So Hollow Knight is kind of a breakthrough in that regard. I'm not sure I understand its success well enough to say that if there's anything that you can rip out of that and kind of, apply to the Metroid franchise to boost its standing. I mean, if you're looking at it at the most basic level, you could say, have it be cheaper and longer.
Well, and also how it takes like 7 years to come out with a sequel and kind of promise a sequel but never really deliver it and have people talking about it forever.
Well, sure, yeah, but still, I mean, the original Hollow Knight success has to be factored in, that
Right.
didn't have that kind of, like you said, that build up of anticipation and all that you mentioned. That is a very unique circumstance. Although Prime 4, in some ways, like in its own weird way, is kind of has some of the same thing kind of going on, but not necessarily. I would say the same kind of fevered anticipation. I mean, we're not that far away now, and I'm not plugged in enough to really be able to tell you anything about the level of anticipation with any authority. But
yeah. Well, the thing is,
I can't imagine
is I think it has that PC Steam fervor around it, right? That Prime 4 would not, right?
It's more accessible, right? It is more accessible from the point of view that it's the breadth of platforms and the price, and the promise of a game that lasts longer. I mean, that would be the thing that I've not played Silksong yet, but when I played Hollow Knight, what was kind of interesting about it to me. It was in a lot of ways it was going against what I like about Metroid and games of its ilk, is that they feel, that they're actually very sort of intricately constructed little kind of mazes that, there's a sort of correct pathway through, and it feels like you're exploring this like crazy world, but really you're just kind of going on a kind of more curated journey than you're meant to kind of realise, and it all wraps up relatively quickly. Whereas with Hollow Knight, there was much more of a feeling of like, oh, I'm exploring something that's actually vast. I can sort of like go a long way here, like exploring in the darkness, and you kind of don't know really, really don't know kind of how far you're going to go and where you're going to end up. And I think that was one of the things that was really kind of enjoyable about it, is it felt different in the format. But, I think, say, for instance, if one were to try and replicate that in the Metroid setting, how successful would it be? And are you kind of compromising the essence of that? Design. You may alienate the kind of people that are actually buying Metroid games.
I struggle with the idea of. I mean, I'm not going to advocate leaving the infants on Mount Tagatus like Guillaume is here, but there is a sense that like Metroid just kind of is what it is, but. The idea of like, well, we'll just back away from it, whatever. It's not gonna, I mean, the first Animal Crossing wasn't a big deal. Like, it just kind of came and went. The second Animal Crossing, the DS one, was a bigger deal. Well, I say the first one that came to the West, because that is almost indistinguishable from its N64 counterpart.
It's pretty much the same game, right? Because the GameCube game was like as small as an N64 game. That's why you could run it without the disc.
I just can't run the risk of any pedant sending us an email, so I'm cutting them off at the pass. Stop typing. The DS game did well, but it wasn't like a world beater. And then by the 3DS game, you start to see like, oh, there's something happening here. But you don't have to go to something that extreme.
Yeah, I mean, the DS game was very successful, but I guess the 3DS game, it was on a less successful platform. Right. So I think relative to the overall health of the platform, the 3DS Animal Crossing was an even bigger success. But you have to kind of qualify it that way. And then, of course, we get to Switch and 2020 and something just completely extraordinary.
Even before COVID maybe gave that game a turbo boost, we actually talked about on this show when the novel coronavirus was still a thing in China. We talked about on this show me stumbling across people putting together their Animal Crossing planning journals for Animal Crossing on Switch. This is before COVID made everybody buy Animal Crossing because it was the only way they could get social interaction. This was a thing that was already happening. So that game had already become this sort of weird cultural phenomenon on its own before it came out and before a virus that infects your nose and then down to your rest of your body fucked and gave it the turbo gas. But you don't have to go to a franchise that old. Or you go ahead, John, what were you saying?
No, I was just going to say, I'm just looking it up, and as of June 30th, 2025, total sales for New Horizons has reached 48.19 million copies.
Yeah. It's the second biggest selling game on Switch.
That is just nuts.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Oof,
but
man.
And we'll talk about it because it's going to come up in another email. I mean, it's getting new content now, 5 years later. But you can look at something that's got a much longer tail. And like I said, well, Animal Crossing, all right. But by the second game, it was already starting to take off. Okay, fine. Let's talk about fucking Zelda. What was the story on Zelda? That, like, the game was dropping its sales as, like, it high water marked on Ocarina of Time, and that it was kind of ticking downward, especially in Japan, where it was headed towards obscurity in Japan, and then fucking Breath of the Wild happens. And that game blows up. It is a massive seller. And Tears of the Kingdom happens. It is a massive seller. The Hyrule Warriors based in Breath of the Wild sold huge numbers.
It is the biggest selling move in the game, I believe.
It is.
And you think about some of the, they've had plenty of big franchises attacking, Dragon Quest and Gundam, and it's not as if there haven't been popular properties associated with it before.
No, and those were multi-platform. This was just on Switch. It was singularly on Switch, and it still just blew the doors off. So what happened? Well, they found a model that made that thing blow up. So, like, the value of a brand like this that has enough cachet that if they announce a new one, it'll get coverage, even if it isn't necessarily like a major seller, is that if they announce a new Metroid, which, I mean, they've got a Metroid coming out, but let's set Prime 4 aside for the purposes of my hypothetical.
It's been a long time since they've announced one at this point, I guess, because Dread was announced back in 21 or something, right? Was it, or was it the same year that it came out in 22?
I think it was the same year it came out. But if
that is more normal for Nintendo, especially considering it came out in October. So yeah,
right. If they announce a big new Metroid product, it's going to get pretty broad coverage. And coverage doesn't mean quite the same as it does, but it means influencers will talk about it too and all that stuff. If it is transformative in some way that they land the formula, it will blow the doors off. Like that is the calculus here. Now, can they find the pattern that will get them the outcome they want? I don't know. Like, it isn't just, they're Metroidvanias. Why can't Metroidvania X be successful and Metroidvania Y was? Like, it doesn't work that way. It's the other things that make that game. Like, people liked Hollow Knight because they liked the art, they liked its storytelling, they liked the roguelite combat that was in there. Its emphasis on combat is quite different than something that a Metroid game would do. It does have exploration, it does have backtracking, it does have all that stuff, but that's not quite as important as it is in some of the Metroid games. The puzzle solving isn't as deep. It's much more interested in the combat stuff. And that's not the kind of game Nintendo's going to want to make the Metroid franchise into be, although Dread does have more combat.
Yeah, that's the thing. And that's the thing, isn't it? Is like when you think of the Mercury Steam ones, the kind of like the counter that was in the Metroid 2 remake, and then, you got some of that in Dread as well. There's a certain amount of pushback against that, right? It's just like, that's not, what people play Metroid for, is spending a lot of time beating up things, but I guess that's probably one of the things that's, at the heart of the dilemma. If you were going to undertake the sort of, mission, as it were, of like, we're not content to just keep releasing things that might sell a couple of million or something. That's small potatoes, right? So we think we think like we're either going to grow this thing or we're going to leave it behind, perhaps. You would have to risk alienating the people that actually currently buy it. To see if you could reach beyond them. And, I think it's fair to say that Zelda, did do that, right? I mean, like, they left some things behind, like, aspects of the dungeon design and, the sequence of everything, being so rigidly non-linear that it kind of changed, very much like, that I would say, especially like the 3D Zeldas. That was my favourite part of those. When you're talking about Ocarina and Twilight Princess, the dungeons, and then they don't really work that way and satisfy in the same way in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. So, those decisions, were risks in the sense that you could alienate people that actually like your games, and maybe you don't land with all these other people. But of course, yeah, they did succeed, as you mentioned. 30-odd million, I think, with Breath of the Wild, 20-odd for Tears of the Kingdom. These are numbers, that the series, even with, significant commercial successes in the past, couldn't really dream of until then. Right. So that's the kind of thing that the kind of risks that you'd have to take. And like I said, perhaps it would be, about making, a world that was more vast, than previous games and all that kind of thing. And it would risk alienating people like me that like their compactness. That's one of the things I'm most pleased about. I mean, obviously Super Metroid is kind of difficult to shift because it's so seminal, and was so impactful playing it in the mid-90s. But in terms of one to replay, I would always say Zero Mission, because it's very compact. It's so brisk and fast, and it's just really fun. And I would love another game like that in a lot of ways. And Dread is definitely on a bigger scale, but it doesn't go so far away from that where it's like, oh, this is going to take dozens and dozens of hours. So it's still somewhat in that range. But if you're saying, it's got to be more popular, then you might want to risk making, those kinds of changes. Now, in terms of the specific kind of changes that might actually work, then, I don't have the imagination to go to that, to make good suggestions there.
We're making a lot of comparisons with Zelda, and I feel like, it's, apples and oranges a little bit. There are so many differences between those two franchises, especially the rate at which new games in them got released. And also, I think it's kind of very important that Metroid skipped the N64, like the Ocarina of Time was just this mind-blowing game at the time. It had a great impact on a whole generation of gamers, and Metroid just kind of skipped over that. And then, like, its shot was on the GameCube, which was had such a smaller install base, and also was a generation where, it was very small pool in a very big. I don't even know how to. I can't finish this. No,
but yeah, the PS2 was absolutely massive. Yeah, just and dwarfed everything.
While Metroid Prime was a very impressive game to people who were already fans of Metroid, I think the PS2 had like freaking GTA 3. It had the game that was like the Ocarina of Time of its time. Like you can go anywhere. Like it felt like it gave you that. Well, it blew people's minds away, right? And I don't think, while very good, I don't think Metroid Prime did quite that. And so we're...
Oh, sure. But to be fair, look, with Zelda is one example. But there's others. I would point to Luigi's Mansion as a game, as a series that started on GameCube that's managed to grow to levels of success that I would not have thought possible, back then, really.
I think that's a better comparison, yeah.
Yes, but I still think, look, there's always going to be differences, right? I think, Luigi's Mansion, you could say, well, it's got more of a built-in appeal for a range of demographics, right? Because it's very cartoony and got lots of personality that the sort of stoicism of Metroid doesn't seem to allow, unless you were going to make radical kind of revisions to how it's presented, and so forth. So, you can always make the point that there's an apples and oranges component, because there is. But
sure,
the point is
but
with
like
Luigi's
Mansion is a much smaller, like much fewer entries, kind of maybe a more similar release schedule to Metroid than Zelda did, because Zelda kept having occasions to iterate. Like, it had entries on like on the handhelds and on the consoles. So did Metroid for a while. I don't know where I'm going with this. Anyway, yes, like
no, I think you're quite right in terms of the point is like Luigi's Mansion obviously begins on the GameCube. There's a little bit of similarity with Metroid Prime starting on the GameCube. You're not Zelda, especially in somewhat more recent times, but even going back quite a while, like there's almost a new Zelda product every year, right? Like, whereas there was a brief window in time where that was true for Metroid, because you had, Prime, Fusion, Zero Mission, Pinball, Hunters, Prime 2, Prime 3, like from...
And then the lay fallow for, much longer than that long time period where people were like, where's Metroid, between Super Metroid and Metroid Prime. Like, you thought 8 years was long? Well, you wait.
You get older, and that 8 years passes a lot more quickly, doesn't it? That's the reality of it. But the point is that was a weird. That's the outlier for Metroid, whereas for Zelda, there's always been a steady stream of Zelda product. But as James already mentioned, Animal Crossing. That, is not something that had releases all the time. There was a big gap between 3DS and Switch, and that's some of what fueled the fever for it. I would say, people kept waiting for that announcement because obviously it skipped Wii U except for that bloody board game thing. But not many people would have played it on Wii U if it hadn't skipped it. But the reality is, I think, it seems like, it is possible to break through in some cases, if you kind of, stick with it and you keep trying to hone in on, things that I guess the really tricky part is honing in on is what is it that people like about this as it stands, and how can you extend that appeal to more people without losing, you might have to make modifications that are a little bit risky, but hopefully you don't lose them. Because you're going to need them for word of mouth, I think, as much as anything, right? You know what I mean? It's like, for as much as Breath of the Wild kind of blew up, I would assume, a lot of that is, the highly enthusiastic Zelda players, even if they might have liked a lot of the things in that Ocarina of Time formula, and some of those were going away, they were still very enthusiastic evangelists for what Breath of the Wild became. And you probably would need that, I think, if you're gonna, get Metroid out there to more people. I think one of the problems as well with Metroid is there's if people, especially considering this sort of weird twist of fate where it's become, part of the genre descriptor, that people know the name. It's not like, oh, well, all we have to do is get the mind share. We have to get people to know what this thing is. Like, people know it. They've known it for a long time. So, you can't just think about cracking at that particular nut and then everything else is gonna, kind of take care of itself. I think, you would have to take risks actually with the framework of the game. And
I think that was the main thing with the word of mouth for Breath of the Wild, was the fact that people could sit there and say, oh, no, this is not like those other Zelda games that you may not have liked. This is more like modern games that you're used to, open world.
Right.
And then people could say,
Survival games.
Okay, so it's like this Assassin's Creed game that I just played or something like that.
It's like that survival game Ark that I played on PC for all those years. Like, it's...
Yeah. But that's also what I'm worried about with Metroid Prime 4, is that its formula will be too close to all of the other Metroid Prime games, and so it's not going to be, or it really won't have that kind of word of mouth as like a quantum leap over anything. It's like, if you like the other Metroid Prime games, then you'll like this, but otherwise you probably don't want to.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought Prime 3, I know people who people don't like Prime 3, but I thought Prime 3 actually did a good job of being more approachable, of better telegraphing what you need to do and how you need to do it. And I actually thought that the Wii controls worked well with that game.
Yeah.
Besides the whole yank back on the nunchuck to open a door thing, that wasn't necessary. That
Anything involving the nunchuck motion control wise was never a good idea.
But the idea of hey, we're gonna make this game. I don't think Prime 4 can be the game because Prime 4 is still trying to work the lineage of the Prime series. But I absolutely believe you could make a Metroid game that maybe isn't quite so self-serious, because the franchise can be very self-serious despite the fact that the characters do not merit such a thing. That is maybe a little more, not necessarily forgiving, because Hollow Knight could be very difficult.
No, that's another interesting thing about its success. I thought, I guess you could, make the obvious analog with Demon Souls, Dark Souls, that, there is this sort of appetite for that kind of experience on a scale that I don't think up to a certain point anyway in the, HD generation, at the beginning of that anyway, your 360 PS3, it felt like no one really wanted to believe that was possible, that, everything was going about, just make it easier to see what's in the game, right? That publishers lived in terror of spending money on stuff in making a game that players would never see because it was too difficult. So it was all just kind of make it a smooth slide through the progression of the game. And then, midway through that, you get Demon Souls and Dark Souls that kind of show, actually some of these barriers, and making it feel more rewarding is actually something that people can, not just some people can respond to, but just in bigger numbers, than was thought sort of possible. But, and then it seems like Hollow Knight kind of tapped into some of that as well.
Yeah, I think there is, I think part of making the franchise more appealing is also tied into, and like I said, Hollow Knight is very charming to look at. It wouldn't be the case, go look at I think it's Fangamer has the rights to it. They've made so many fucking plushes and enamel pins and art books and all kinds of stuff, cutified versions of characters. There is an appeal that game has visually that resonated, that certainly Dread did not attempt. Dread was going for the grimdark Samus.
Which just the kind of, don't forget, you've had in the past, haven't you? You've had the odd excursion into let's have more characters, more people that you could kind of latch onto, possibly, with the bounty hunters in Prime 3 or the people in Other M. And most of the time it's just do not want. That's been the response. It's just and there's, you can look at both ends of that in terms of how well was it executed and then how receptive is the audience. But the net result was no thanks. And then, Dread is, perhaps not surprisingly, about the isolation, which is, it is kind of a lot of the essence of those early games. So
right.
It's hard to find fault with it. But if you wanted to, if you were going to make a priority of making it more popular, maybe you would have to compromise on that and have more points of because again, I think with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the characters, the champions and stuff, I do think that is also part of why
it absolutely is.
It's popular. It's not just the structure and the vastness and all the rest
even
of it.
Link is more of a character in that game, ironically. Everyone
the
has
voice
more
acting,
substance.
all this kind of stuff. Again, how good of a fit any of it is with Metroid is debatable. And at a certain point, maybe after you say to yourself, maybe it would be better to just, not do anything with it, as Guillaume said, and rather than crowbar in things that don't fit because you think you have to make it popular. I mean, that is a kind of question somebody in Nintendo has to ask and answer themselves, right? But presumably, at this point, Sakamoto would still be kind of at the top of that list, beyond just, looking at it from a strictly commercial proposition. But, I think that is one of the things that makes it less, it's because, Hollow Knight has, between the music and the aesthetic and the structure, it has a cohesive world that has, endeared itself to people.
Absolutely.
That I don't think any Metroid game has ever really done that.
Or even
mainly because it wasn't particularly trying, but right. that is the reality of it.
I want a Metroid game. Like, if you want to get popularity, I want a Metroid game that features a significant amount of horse girls. I think that is the current popularity streak for your gacha games. Turn Samus into a representation of a Japanese racehorse.
It has to be a battle royale with Travis Scott as another bounty hunter.
God damn it!
Yep,
I went straight to Uma Musume. John's like, "Fuck you, Fortnite's coming with Travis Scott."
It's coming.
Hell
man.
yeah, brother! No, God damn it! You made it worse than me, and I was trying to make it worse. I don't know. Like, I don't think the franchise is incapable of producing a game that is actually really good and really fun and has a broader appeal than the current Metroid franchises. I just think people who make Metroid like what Metroid currently is and are unlikely to do that.
Yeah, I don't think they want it to have broad appeal, really. They want it to be kind of a niche, brooding sort of thing.
It fills
we did mention Luigi's Mansion and what's the developer's name?
Next Level.
Next Level, yeah, did try, did tackle the Metroid franchise with Federation and
Federation Force. No, absolutely.
Federation Force, right? So that was a left turn.
I think
so they tried to make something that was different, that was more.
No, it doesn't. I mean, look, that obviously is its own thing, and it was in a tough period for the company with the when the 3DS is kind of trying to carry things on its back when it really shouldn't have had to at that point, and while the Switch was cooking. But it's not a great advertisement for how open the Metroid sort of established fan base is for things to change.
No, it's not. Yeah, people rejected it. It was not a bad idea in and of itself. And
those fans aren't people.
Monster Hunter was big on the 3DS.
I just want to clarify that those weren't people.
Anyway,
I mean, some of it could have been bots, to be fair. So, I mean, it would shock me.
I don't know. Maybe asking fans of who really have to have Samus isolated, not talking to anyone on some doomed planet. Maybe asking them to collaborate with others in a squad-based online shooter. It was not really the best fit.
And it's the context, right? Because it's however many years after Other M and nothing else has happened. If it was in the context of when for instance, Hunters was happening on DS, which was very different, right? Structurally, different playable characters, multiplayer focus, all that stuff. I'm sure there were some people that were sniffy about it back then. I mean, that's basically a certainty, but it went down a lot more smoothly than Federation Force did a decade later, because it was in that period we already mentioned where there was some Metroid thing round the corner pretty much all the time.
There was too much Metroid thing.
It was between Prime 2 and Prime 3, right? That particular one. So it's oh, hey, we've had a couple of Prime games. We've got another one coming out. This is like a handheld spin-off, so that was a particular circumstance to really bring out that kind of hostility. But in terms of the available data that Nintendo has for is this a franchise you take chances with? It's not really in the plus column, is it? That experience, for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, I would say that it's that if they're gonna do anything, they just need to basically say damn the torpedoes and go. But I think they're happy with it filling. Yeah, it's niche, but it lives in their catalog. It is, as long as the games break even, they probably don't care, because it's kind of like a brand establishment moment. This game won't break even. Metroid Prime 4 will lose an epic amount of money. It might end up being the most unsuccessful game Nintendo has ever published. Just because of the sheer budget of this game for having been in development for so goddamn long.
No, I mean, I guess by definition, normally we don't know about this sort of thing happening with Nintendo. So it's like maybe things like this have happened before and we didn't know about it, but it doesn't really seem like it's hard to imagine that this won't be exactly what you just said, because they are normally very conservative and very sort of prudent. And this has not been that.
Games that they spend a lot of money on generally do pretty well. Like, they're pretty good about guarding their flank on these big, expensive projects.
No, exactly. They're not going to pour that amount of money, into something that they don't feel like the return is there. That's normally how they do things. Again, you're just talking about a different time. You're talking about a time where, they funded Bayonetta sequels. Like, how much money were they ever going to make? But they did it because they felt like they needed to just chase stuff that could get attention, that could just get attention from quarters that weren't their usual kind of, base, just so they were casting out in a lot of different directions any way they could to try and, kind of, because it was such a low ebb, when, the 3DS had that really tough launch, and then, with the Wii U and all that, it didn't pan out very well. So, it's, nowadays it's a completely different calculus, and you can't really take anything for granted about what, if anything, will come out of Metroid, in the future. But if there's anything about it, like I said, I lament my lack of imagination for specific recommendations they could take, and but if there's anything about Hollow Knight's success, that you could come out of it, just the feeling of like, hey, don't necessarily just assume that this has like a really hard ceiling that you couldn't possibly break through. If the conditions weren't right, like there is something possible there that you might not have necessarily thought of before, and it's at least worth exploring.
All right, let's do one last email real quick. Trying to find the one that's in there. Actually, you know what? Let's just touch on the animal. We had an email that deals with Animal Crossing, but it's got a longer topic in there, and I don't want to. That's just kind of being done in passing. So let's mention a couple things that came out. Nintendo announced today they were going to do new content for Animal Crossing Wide World, right? That's the one here. Yes.
New Horizons.
New Horizons. I can't fucking remember which Animal Crossing game is which. It's so weird. Like, there's like a weird blind spot.
It's 3DS with New Leaf, yes?
New Leaf, yes.
And now New Horizons, yeah. Again, that kind of reinforces that thread of like, even though 3DS was not super duper successful as a platform, like that was an outsized hit on the New Leaf, so they kind of tied it to that with the branding.
The new content coming is they're adding a hotel to the docks, where essentially you'll be able to do Happy Home Designer in this hotel, where you're given tasks to do there. They're apparently adding a couple new characters and a couple recurring characters that are tie-ins to, is it Splatoon and Zelda?
Yeah, it's like you can summon like villagers that are like cosplaying as Shiver and Fry, I want to say, from Splatoon 3.
Yes.
Big man furniture, that's a big one. You've got big man furniture now.
And then there's a Lego collaboration coming later, which is this weird like snake eating its own tail shit now, where it's like,
yeah, because there is Animal Crossing Lego, isn't there?
There's so much Animal Crossing Lego. There are so many kits. There's like 20 kits at this point. It's absurd.
When I was confronted with the image of the Lego bed, I confess I did think of Milhouse's dad.
That's valid. But pretty much everybody sleeps in a race car bed on the island in Animal Crossing, so it's fine. There's the Dream State. They're adding new content in there, I guess. And then on top of all that stuff, they are also making a Switch 2 version that is $5. It's cheaper than the average Switch 2 version. But these features are present for all players, regardless of what console you are playing them on, and they are available for free. The Switch 2 version, I believe, is mostly performance-oriented.
Well, yeah, what I've seen with the Switch 2, it's about 12 minutes, the video.
Yeah, I had a chance to watch it all
I
yet.
didn't quite see all of it, but so unfortunately, but from what I've gathered, it's, resolution predictably higher.
Right.
Frame rate, I think, is the same. I don't think that's changing. I'm not a big deal with Animal Crossing, I gotta say, but I'm sure there's people out there that lament the lack of extra frames for Animal Crossing. But there's like more people. You can interact with more people at once. I think it's
12
like 12,
players, yeah.
12 people. So that's and of course you got mouse control, which I did think of that, as a potential, more thinking of a Switch 2 specific Animal Crossing game one day, for doing designs and, your layout and the happy home designer type stuff you already mentioned. Like it seems like a natural fit, and they're doing that.
Yeah, the 12 player is only if everybody is on Switch 2. On the island at one time. Also, camera and voice chat.
Yeah, the megaphone. So you can like say the name of a villager and it like, sort of, they respond to it.
Stupid. This is so stupid. Beyond that, we're also getting an Ultra Hand tie-in, which I'm a little concerned about. But okay, sure.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's a bunch of Nintendo history stuff, including consoles, and you can actually like boot. If you go throwback to, GameCube Animal Crossing, like they will boot up a game.
Wow.
So like if you play, they showed Ice Climber. I know you're excited.
You fucks.
I think you do have to be an NSO subscriber to access that. I think from what the voiceover said.
That's even more insane.
You already have access to Ice Climber on the NSO, but it's like, I guess maybe they've paid for their NSO subscription, but they've never downloaded that app, and this might point them in that direction. I don't know.
And I was talking to the girlfriend about this today. She brought it up, actually. Apparently fans who watch this thing super tightly also noticed that multi-crafting is now in here. So like when you make things, you can say, I want to make X number of them rather than having to make
bulk. Yeah, bulk crafting. That definitely, it was a long time since I played it regularly now, but that was something you kind of, you wanted back then.
Nice quality of life for the sickos.
Yeah, but like, this is
very belated quality.
This is 4 years after they said this will be the last update. Like this is very late. But it's time to come with the Switch patch, which is January 15th, which is quite a long ways away.
But you can pre-order now.
Sure, you can pre-order the upgrade to the game you already have.
Yeah.
I think there actually is a new physical release for Switch 2 coming as well.
Probably. Yeah.
Also. So like,
it's what they've done so far, isn't it? With Kirby and the Zelda games and all that. It's like, if you've ever thought, what if that box art was worse because it's got a bloody big red banner on it? Well, now you can have that.
But also you can't craft your own big red banner. You lack the skill.
No, you couldn't possibly achieve it yourself, but if someone were to give it to you, I mean, it is the Wii U problem with the box, isn't it? It's just like, you had a system before that was really popular, so you feel you have to be very overt with the differentiation, but it's just bloody ugly.
Also, you caused the need to be so overt. Like, you did it. That was on you. You could have just been more explicit in the branding, but no.
Yeah. Well, especially with Wii U, they really dug their own grave with the opacity of the whole messaging and all that. But the thing about Wii U's box arts is so many of them went out of their way to kind of make the image work with the heavy blue surround.
They did.
They very, very often it was like a generally quite cool kind of color palette to like blend in with that. Whereas, of course, these are just old the box arts we've already had. So you get that, that kind of greeny kind of sky of Tears of the Kingdom with a bloody big red banner on top of it. That doesn't
yes.
It does. I mean, it's all this angst about, physical copies of Switch 2 games and what the game card contains. And it's just like, it looks fucking hideous anyway. Why would you want it?
asking the big questions. But yeah, I guess this pretty much precludes us getting an Animal Crossing anytime soon. Because why would you fucking bother?
Yeah, I agree.
I'll be curious how many of the upgrades they sell. Like, I mean, we know, as we talked about earlier, there are many copies in the wild from which one could upgrade.
And it is only $5, so
yeah, it's half price of the average one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. So far, we'd seen two kind of approaches, right? There was just the kind of like performance, upgrade that was $10 that didn't necessarily really have like more content to it, and then there was the one that would come with more content, like Kirby or Mario Party, that was the $20. So this is like a different kind of category again. But I guess it must be okay for whatever particular reason, not just to get people to, spend $5, but also this feeling of maybe, they want to get more I'm sure so many of those tens of millions of people that were playing Animal Crossing at some point have fallen off. And, Animal Crossing is one of these games that doesn't always seem that inviting to come back to because of like the state of everything that the island is going to be in when it hasn't been cared for, which I think is some of how they're using Mr. Rossetti. Like Mr. Rossetti is back,
yes.
And he can just kind of like clear an area, like, just, not just of like, weeds or whatever, but like kind of clutter as well. So you can kind of rearrange it as you like. So yeah, I guess on multiple levels, they're trying to make it more inviting to give people a reason to come back and play with it again.
And also maybe get it back people's memories before the holidays. It's one of those things like, hey, you have Switch 2, you could still play Animal Crossing. If you don't have it, copies of, if for somehow you own a Switch 2 and don't own Animal Crossing, I guess I'm talking to myself. Here it is. And upgrade's coming.
Again, it does seem like the kind of game, and of course, we will get a Switch 2 specific Animal Crossing one day. As you said, it seems like you'd probably put that as a bit further out now, but, game chat seems like it's kind of like, this is one of the things it's made for, this hangout type of scenario.
Yeah, it's a great game for it.
Yeah. Maybe they think it'll help drive adoption of game chat, of people buying the camera and actually engaging with it and using it in a way that some of the other like Mario Kart. I don't know whether that's really the same kind of fit, is it? So I think that might be part of the reasoning here as well.
I guess the other thing it helps is selling or keeping people current on their subscriptions. Because remember, one of the perks of the higher tier subscription is access to the 2.0 DLC.
Yeah, that's right.
So get some renewals, that kind of stuff. I don't know. Or maybe the team is they just had to learn the Switch 2. So like, I don't know, go make this run well and add some shit while you're at it, I guess.
Have all the Nintendo first-party games gotten that free upgrade DLC? Have they given them all on NSO? Because then I paid for no reason for Kirby.
No. Just the Zelda 2, I think, were really the only two that were included with the expansion pack. It's a bit muddled, isn't it? You know what I mean? In terms of like, they've got these different kind of tiers of like upgrade, but then also we gave some of those away with the expansion pack, but then not others. It's, I can imagine, especially for people not necessarily following it as closely as even we might, it's, a bit muddled, but
initially,
I guess
one might have thought initially that it was called the NSO expansion pack because of expansion packs. It gives you access to expansion packs quite literally in Nintendo games. But I guess that's not it.
I think you'll find it's due to the cultural touchstone status of the expansion pack for the N64. I mean, everyone remembers it. Everyone knows what it is and has only good associations with it.
Oh,
yeah. Yep.
All right. There's one other thing I want to touch on. Well, Greg, you wanted to touch on it.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, look, we're still recovering from the Sakurai second Kirby Air Riders Direct where he wheeled out yet more amiibo, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, we
We're
had
making
already
a joke about, well, they certainly wouldn't let me make a lot of amiibo, right? As he just keeps pulling them out from his infinite magic hat.
I think when we got to the chef one, it's like, all right, he's taking the piss now.
Oh, yeah, because he's got this dumb grin on his face, too, as he's doing it. Like, when I thought they wouldn't let me make, he puts one on the table. That many more, he puts another one on the table. But it's like, what are you?
He should have just pulled something out that was like made out of plasticine that he made himself just to just
to mess with people,
and then released it anyway. Like, no, it actually is.
No, yeah, the Mr. Sakurai's plasticine model of the hamster Rick, whatever. You know, no, I mean, we don't think DDD's one like it has like parts that you can sort of take off and rotate to a different configuration to match what it is in the game and stuff.
Right,
it's like
it transforms in the game.
I can't imagine these are going to be very cheap, especially for people in the US. But apparently Amiibo are just like bizarrely resilient. I mean, I guess the situation with how much they cost in the US is really going to put it to the test, just how resilient the market for them is.
They ain't cheap.
But we had sort of additional confirmation of how resilient they are this week because Capcom had a sort of little broadcast. I think it was called The Road to Requiem. So this is, pertaining to Resident Evil 9 that will be coming out in February next year. Where they had the voice actor for Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil 8, recapping the whole, lore of the series in about 10 minutes while also doing product announcements. So, not an easy thing, but she got to stand in front of the corkboard and make the connections between the Umbrella Corporation and the reverse vampires or whatever the fuck's behind everything. But the thing is, we had more Amiibo announcements in that it's just like, of all the places, I mean, in a lot of ways, you could say should have been predictable because Capcom are weirdly enthusiastic about Amiibo. The Street Fighter 6 stuff, the fighters there and the cards, Monster Hunter stuff over the years, Mega Man, lots of stuff. But this still struck me as just, a bit funny where it's just like, yes, and we also have an Amiibo of the protagonist. But the picture they used to announce that was just like a blank background. It's like, okay, you don't have the final design yet, but you've told us that it's the protagonist. Like, you have
a picture of him.
Just
so stupid.
Just use that as a placeholder, But
the protagonist is a girl.
Yes, that's right. I'm trying to remember. She's related to a character from Outbreak or something. It's like a pretty deep cut.
Resident Evil has the smallest gene pool in the world. Everyone's related somehow or another. It's bizarre.
So I mean that tickled me, but also they had a Pro Controller 2 that's got the Switch
stupid.
2 Pro Controller that's got the first one to have unique graphics, and it's like Raccoon City newspaper clippings textured onto the. It's so strange. I guess you've got to love them for going absolutely all in on the Switch release.
The thing is, it doesn't even look like newspaper. Until you really look at it, you see it says so. All right, this is how dumb it is because this is Capcom and they can't even not fuck up their own logos. It says Resident Nintendo Switch 2 Ville because they have to put the Switch 2 logo there. Nintendo mandates it, but they just literally cut a hole in the title Resident Evil. And
it also kind of suggests that the newspaper is called the Resident Evil Times or something.
Maybe that's a problem. Maybe you should just not live in a place that puts evil in the subject of their title. I don't know. But also the E in evil is cut off by one of the graphics they threw on there. This thing looks like dog shit. It's so bad.
It's very misguided.
Also, there's an Iron Cross on there for no good reason under the plus button.
It's the umbrella logo. But
I know it is, but in two factors, it's just the Iron Cross.
Yes, when you take away the colour from it, it is going to look like that. It tickled me. I'm sure this is not the most.
How is Capcom this bad at this shit? How are they always this bad at this shit?
It's not the highest priority news item by any means, but
it might be. It could be in that news article you could read in the XA. I need somebody to get a high res because there's no way that's not lorem ipsum text. There's no way. Or it's going to be something completely fucking stupid. It's going to be like somebody just typing the words itchy tasty over and over again or some bullshit.
That wouldn't be bad, actually. So, I mean, that did kind of, I mean, look, it's pretty cool that you're getting, this PS5 game on Switch 2. Same launch date, you can buy the sort of combo pack with Resident Evil 7 and 8, the gold versions together with it, like for an extra so many bucks. Like that, it might only be like an extra $10 per game on top or something for like, so I like how much they're committing to it, but it just kind of comes across as kind of a little bit strange. I don't know, maybe like some of this stuff is coming together a bit late. Like I said, you're not even. I mean, some of these other amiibo aren't coming for ages, like the Rosalina and Mario Galaxy ones are like well into next year. Yeah, they're well into next year. The other Kirby Air Riders ones that were announced, like Meta Knight and DDD and all that, like they're well into next year. So yeah, a lot of this stuff is announced for ages. Right? Although I'll tell you one thing about, for all Capcom's enthusiasm about Amiibo, can you believe that they're going to have an Amiibo of the protagonist from Resident Evil 9 and there isn't one of Chun-Li? Like that just seems wrong to me. Like,
but all the people in that franchise we do have.
Yes, there's quite a few Street Fighter ones, but not. Like, isn't like Chun-Li like pretty much like second to Ryu and Ken as like the
she's been replaced by Luke. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone loves Luke. Mm-hmm. What can I say?
I guess it's a fair play to it for being willing to push the new characters, but it just, I really what I'm saying is I can't believe she wasn't in Smash.
Well, that is a different. Yes, I get that. It's weird. It's fucking weird. I can't take my eyes off this Resident Evil controller, so we need to stop.
It could be a problem when you're trying to play with it.
And unimpressive.
But it's not normal. It's not normal at all. It's normal for Capcom, but it's for sloppy. any other company put this out, you'd be like, this looks like dog shit.
Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, we look at this and we're like, oh man, they spelled the name of the game right, even though they cut off some of the letters. Good job. It's like talking to the dumbest kid in your class. Like, oh, he tied his shoes today, everybody. Good job. You get a sticker. It's like, Capcom, please, I'm begging you. Have some self-fucking respect. Like, they could have screen printed the text on the handles where they're not going to be obscured by a bunch of goddamn buttons, but nope, goes right here. They could have put anything there. They could have made it look like a zombie face. Wouldn't it have been funnier if this controller just looked like a zombie face? Like the plus and minus were the eyes. There's no way the text under those buttons is spelled right? There's going to be spelling errors and all kinds of bullshit. God, it's so dumb. It's so awful. I might need to switch to Pro Controller. John, I might need to switch to Pro Controller. It might need to be this piece of shit too. I mean, it's so.
I think
stupid.
You could use one.
I mean, I use my Switch 1 Pro controller, and the fact that I can't turn the Switch on has become more annoying than I expected it to be.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things where it's like, it's very nice. It's very, very nice.
Just being able, I want to turn my game on. Let me stand up and walk over to the thing and turn it back on.
Mm-hmm.
You need to tape one of the fuck, what are they called? The Joy-Con, just on the back of your Pro controller, and you're fine.
Okay, that's true. I could do that. I mean, I wouldn't be fine. I'd have other issues, but you're right. That would solve that particular problem.
Mm-hmm.
God, this Resident Evil 2 controller is so bad. Part of me is like, I need to own that. I need to see that. I need to feel deep shame every time I look at it. Fuck. And then I needed to get it out of that's the thing. I have to get it out of my house. Because every time I'd look down at the word biohazard, because the D's been cut off, and why? Just why? Like, this is the only answer, the only question. God, it's so bad. Alright, well, on that, email, send them rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That's rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. You can, if you so choose, screen print your email onto a Switch 2 Pro controller, making sure to not disturb the Nintendo required logos or button placement, and email that controller to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That is rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. It's a website. Greg, what is our music to wrap up this episode?
Well, yeah, there's a little bit of a connection to Far Off Amiibo because I wanted something to coincide with the launch of Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, in this case, which has, obviously, we already had the sort of the sages come out from Tears of the Kingdom back when Switch 2 launched. But at that time, they did say they were going to be doing the Minoru construct, the kind of owl robot thing, sometime in the future. And I don't think they ever had any actual, finished, photographs of that either, but they did at least have the good sense to, use artwork to substitute for it. But yeah, we've got the new Hyrule Warriors coming out, and so that offers a few musical possibilities in terms of you could look at Age of Calamity, you could look at Tears of the Kingdom, but I thought, let's go a bit further back, to the original Hyrule Warriors on Wii U, because, I feel like, it's been, quite a number of years now, and that had, obviously a little bit more of its own personality when it came to the soundtrack, because, it was not, especially with the Age of Imprisonment, which is, we promised 100% canon, genuine, Zelda all the way down, rather than, spin-off-y
Space
stuff.
Egg.
Yeah, none of that. Oh, this is serious business.
I can't wait for the Space Egg to show up. I just can't.
It just turns up, flips us off, and then buggers off again. No.
10 out of 10 game.
I feel like, I like Age of Calamity, played it for quite a long time, but the original Hyrule Warriors, it did get to be a bit looser, because it was just bringing in a bunch of stuff from all different parts of the franchise, and I said that kind of extended to the soundtrack as well. This particular song that I'm going for, Eclipse of the Moon, there's a few different kind of renditions of it during the kind of campaign, so it's basically a sort of big climactic fight theme. And one of the, maybe more than one of the versions, is more like your typical, Warriors, guitar driven, kind of version. That's my stereotypical view of, when Warriors does something, is just do it with guitars. But this is more, probably a little closer to something that would fit in more with, the Age of Calamity and Imprisonment kind of ethos, because it's orchestra driven, all that. But, I think, it's, pretty effective at what it's doing, trying to build you up for, the big battle. It's tough, because when the entire game is of you fighting hordes of things, from minute one, it's kind of difficult to get that sense of escalation where it's, well, this is even more hordes, so the music has to do kind of a heavy lift there. And I think they kind of achieve that with this song.
Cool. All right. Well, on that, it's time for us to go. Bye, everybody.
Later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.